Hello. So today I am just going to be reading a letter that I sent to the Stevens County Police Department. And of course, they sent me back a letter saying they weren't going to do anything about my complaint. Nothing new there. They don't ever help me or protect me or follow the law or do anything they should. Stevens County is one of the most corrupt counties in Washington State. The ACLU told me years ago that they've been trying to go into that county and bust up the corruption for years, but they couldn't. And they even asked me to find other people who'd been, harmed by them like I have, so that because they don't do represent single people, they only do class action lawsuits. But at the time, they were harassing me, and my life was so messed up that I couldn't. And by the time I actually was able to get my all my information together and get it to the ACLU, they decided they didn't want to do anything anymore. So the ACLU is pretty much worthless. They don't do anything or help anyone anymore. They're a joke. Like most of the government agencies out there, they're a fucking joke and a waste of money, taxpayer dollars, and everything else. But this rich man, I believe I've mentioned him before, George Carnie, is trying to cheat me. He's forged my name on documents. He's trying to steal my property. He's trying all this other stuff. And Fogle Well Supply, and they're in Spokane and Colville, and they're helping him. Fogle says that George forged my name on the deed of trust. George says they did, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, this is a letter. I'm just going to read the letter. I want it out there. I want it online forever so everyone will know what they did. The name of the suspect, person of interest, George Carnie. I love that. And the complainant. Okay, so this is the letter that I sent to them. I'm just going to read it real quick. Well, not real quick because it's several pages. To whom it may concern, I recently obtained documents from Stevens County Title which show a deed of trust document with my signature that I did not sign. When I first contacted George Carnie and Fogle Well Supply, they both accused the other one of having done it. I was asked to write a statement of what transpired. I apologize, but this is very long and detailed. In 2008, I was living with my husband, William Paxton, and our son, Nick, in a shack Bill had built out of tree branches and Walmart bags for insulation. We did not have running water. I got an estimate from a company that said it would be between $3,000 and $5,000. They were going to let me put $1,000 down and make payments on the rest. I asked George Carnie, whom Bill drove truck for at the time, if he would loan me $2,500 I was short to buy a fifth wheel that was for sale by Colville Airport so I could live in that and while I was getting the well put in. The neighbor's well was 66 feet, and since I'm over the aquifer, mine should have been close to the same. George Carney took over everything. George had a credit account with Fogle, and I was forced by Bill and George to let them dig the well. When they began, the workers from Fogle would not even speak to me. Every time they had to speak to their boss, Fogle, or George, they would get in their trucks and drive down the road to cell reception. So every time they had to go further, they would call George and would not speak to me. At about 78 to 80 feet, I saw water come shooting out of the ground with the pressure of several fire hydrants, shooting up in the air to what looked like 20 to 40 feet. I was so excited. I had water, but the guy, the only thing he ever said to me says, "No, that's just surface water. You can't use it." They drilled down to 490 feet, yet when I was finally allowed to use the water, there was no pressure and it runs dry all the time. George Carney would not put the pump on it and would not allow me to use the water for over 6 months until my husband forced me under duress to sign a note saying Bill would pay George back. I was refusing. It was supposed to be a gift. In the beginning, George said he was doing this as a gift so that Bill would not have to worry about me when he was on the road driving truck. When Bill first went to work for George, he was driving long haul. George said because the well cost more than he thought it would, he now wanted to be paid back. One of the notes I signed was just a piece of paper like this that said Bill would begin payments of $350 a month 3 months after our Chapter 13 was completed. There was still a year or so left to pay off the Chapter 13. There was a second paper that was typed and said during that time it was being paid back we would keep the buildings the same. George called a few days later saying he forgot to add some things and needed us to initial the change. The change was some minor word correction on the typed paper. During this time, George decided to bring a single wide trailer he had obtained onto my property as part of the well deal. I did not want that either, but was forced to allow it by Bill Paxton. It was rat infested. It had holes in the floors because it had been used for pigs to live in, and the excrement and pee had worn holes in the floors. The roof had holes and leaked in every room. George did not have any permits to move it or put it on the property. The paper I signed said he would fix the roof, put skirting on the trailer, fix the floors, and put a septic system in. It also stated that George would pay the balance owed on the property, which was about $4,000 owed to John Chantry. George kept lying to Mr. Chantry as well and never paid him. I had been refusing to sign any papers for 6 months, but was forced by my husband under duress to sign the two papers. So George would finally put the pump in and allow me to use my water. George said then things had cost more than he originally planned, so it won't be a gift anymore. Bill was supposed to pay $23,000. He was supposed to pay $350 a month, beginning 3 months after our Chapter 13 was finalized. Because George had lied to John Chantry about paying the balance owed on the land, Mr. Chantry began foreclosure proceedings. I had put my back taxes on the Chapter 13 and knew enough about the law to know they could not take my land when the taxes were already in a payment plan. So after John Chantry's attorney, George Carnie's attorney, and our Chapter 13 attorney all said the property can't be included into Chapter 13, I proved them all wrong. The Chapter 13 trustee backed me up and included my property in the repayment plan. George Carnie didn't fix anything but the roof. Then he illegally buried semi-truck tires in the side of a hill for a septic system. The poo just goes out into the yard and down the hill into a seasonal creek that flows into the aquifer and the lakes. When the Chapter 13 was completed, I began asking Bill when he was going to start paying George, and I was told it was none of my business. In 2010, I wrote up a handwritten statement I titled Notice of Material Breach and had my brother serve it to George. It stated that George had not complied with the agreement that he had made, and I was forced to sign under duress, stating that George would fix all the things wrong and put in the septic, and that I wanted the single wide removed from my property or pay $500 a month storage. George saw me sitting in the car and laughed and threw the notice on the ground without reading it. As far as I know, Bill has never begun payments. He and George are buddies. They talk all the time. Bill still works, so I believe this has been planned from the very start to defraud me out of my property. According to Bill, George hates me so much that he offered Bill $5,000 to divorce me, but I left him due to the abuse and violence. I am also just a piece of property to Bill, and he wants to keep and control both the property and me. Our divorce was finalized on February 13th, 2015. A week later, Bill's dog was killed by a cougar. Bill called me crying and begged me to come back. He promised to get counseling, so I did. That's when Bill told me that he and George had gone to Stevens County title to try and put a lien on my property, which was given to me in the divorce. That is when George found out that Bill had signed a quitclaim deed to me when I purchased the property. My mama didn't raise no dummy. Back in 1999, I sued the King County Police. I won and used the money to move to Stevens County, not knowing the brother of the cop I sued, Paul George, was the captain of the Stevens County Police. Captain George, after years of abuse by the Stevens County Police, false arrests, harassment, etc., I became depressed and weak. I became more dependent on Bill Paxton. Over time, Bill became more and more abusive. He used how the police treated me to scare and control me. He cut me off from all my friends, family, and he controlled everything. He knew I had no one to help and nowhere to go. My mom, the only relative I have left, has always been mean and abusive and liked Bill more than me. Her abusive history is documented with the state. I do want to say at this point, interrupt the letter and say that my mom and I are getting along much better. That was the past, and I don't want to hurt her feelings. If she watches my channel and she watches my videos, Mom, I love you. I know we're working on things, so please don't be upset that I put that in there. In fact, the state took my firstborn son because he went to school and told his teacher I smoked pot. This turned out to be a 9-year battle, and in the end, I lost my parental rights. At one point during the 9-year battle, I received a letter from CPS stating, quote, "Due to the documented abuse you suffered as a child, we will return custody of your son if you move at least 50 miles away from your mother." I still have the letter. At the time, we still lived with her. She had a lot of control over me, and she convinced me that the state was being unreasonable and I should fight them. In fact, my mom was so pissed, she wrote a letter to the Judicial Committee and tried to get the judge disbarred. My loyalty to my mom at the time cost me dearly. The state then decided to take my parental rights. There is much more to it that would take a lot more writing to add in. Hence why, I can't tell all the details about my mom. Just that I love her and we're moving on. There more writing to add in, such as my abusive ex-husband's role, etc. Oh, let's not forget um, my mom started dating, and because she was trying to impress the douchebag, she turned on me and testified for the state to take away my parental rights. The state took away my oldest son permanently, and even though for some odd reason the state never even cared about my younger son. Never quite understood that one. In April of 2016, I found a way to get away from my ex-husband Bill. I was assisted by the victim's advocate in getting a protection order. In April 2016, I went to Stevens County Title to get the deed to my land. That is when I was told that Fogle Pump Supply had put a lien against my property and that someone had forged my name on the deed of trust. I went to Fogle, and the manager told me George Carnie had not paid them and had signed the debt over to them. I asked who had forged my name on the deed of trust, and the manager said George Carnie had done it. I called George to find out what he was trying to pull. George told me that Fogle had changed the documents. I never signed the deed of trust or anything of the kind. It looks like my signature, but I did not sign it. I think it was somehow photocopied. There are places where changes have been made with George's initials. There are different notary stamp dates. I was not part of that, and the documents I did sign on a notebook paper like this have been altered. I also tried to get my tax structure changed because I am disabled. I could have had 5 acres tax free. But George Carney put the single wide trailer, which should be condemned and was forced onto my property against my wishes, in his name. So I can't change my tax structure, nor can I sell my property. The county is charging me taxes on the single wide, saying it is valued at $17,000. Not only should I not be paying taxes on that piece of garbage, but technically George owes me over $40,000 in storage fees and an uncalculated amount for damages, cleanup, and pain and suffering. I'm considering acquiring advice to pursue a claim against Stevens County for participating in helping my abusers, as well as refusing to keep me safe or help me get the single wide removed from my property, and helping George Carney and Bill Paxton forcing me to live there. Because I am on SSI, I have to live on my property or sell it. Because of what George Carney, Fogle Well Supply, and Bill Paxton have done illegally, I cannot sell the property. Therefore, I have no choice but to live in the rat-infested trailer or lose my SSI. I do not understand how they can get away with these crimes or why the county will not help me. I want to press charges against George Carney for fraud, forgery, moving the trailer without permits, placing it on my land with no permits, digging an illegal septic, and refusing to move the trailer. In essence, he abandoned it in 2010 when he was told to get it off my land. I am a victim of years and years of abuse by William Paxton and was forced into this. I am now asking for help. Well, of course, they would not help me at all. All they did was send me this tiny little note saying, well, see, at first, actually, when I brought the letter into them, they had already dismissed the case. They didn't even wait to get my statement. They didn't wait to get my side of what had happened. When I called and reported this, the police officer says, write up a statement and bring it in to me. So I write the statement up and drove, because I was staying at my mom's. It was a 500-mile trip just to bring them the note. So basically a 1,000-mile round trip. And I drove the letter into him, and I get in there last week, and the cop says, oh, what is his name? Anyway, Lek Radzimski? Lek Radzimski. Oh, okay, that's the prosecutor that turned it down. But anyway, the cop, he didn't even wait to get the letter that he asked me for. He just turned in his report, and the prosecutor just dismissed it and wouldn't even do anything. So when I brought this letter, they actually showed me a letter that had supposedly been sent to me, even though I never received it, that said they weren't going to do anything, that the statute had passed. So I gave them this letter, and then they changed the letter that they sent to me. It's a decline of prosecution form, redated, And it says, I've reviewed the investigative file and I decided not to file a complaint or information charging forgery. For the following reasons, the matter is more appropriately resolved as a civil matter. Furthermore, pursuant RCW blah blah, no felony may be prosecuted more than 3 years after its commission. The document that Mrs. Paxton indicates was forged was signed in 2009. The statute of limitations has expired. Well, so that tells me that basically, if you want to commit a crime, as long as nobody finds out about it for 3 years, you're good. So, you can go and forge documents, you can make up illegal liens and place them against people's property, and as long as they don't find out about it for over 3 years, you're good. You're good to go. So, hey, I don't know, maybe I can go and put an illegal lien on Bill Gates' property. He'd probably find out about it, but I'm sure there's some rich-ass morons out there who don't pay attention to that stuff, who don't have attorneys working for them every minute of every day checking that kind of stuff. You know, maybe some of these brain-dead Seahawks or something, I can go and, you know, they're so fucked up on their stupid arrogance and whatever else they do. Like that piece of garbage, Sherman. Oh my God. Oh, that Compton piece of freaking garbage is just. I actually know a chick who dated him. She worked in a nail salon in Spokane, and when he was first training with the Seahawks, before he actually got his contract, he went in to get his nails done and his little dreads or whatever they call those fake little braids, and he asked her out, and she didn't want to go out with him, but her girlfriends pushed her into it, and she said that he was just a low class, mouthy, every other word out his mouth was nigger this, nigger that, you know, just no class whatsoever, trash talking, no manners, rude, obnoxious, horrible man. And most of those guys are. And they're so busy partying and doing stupid shit. Who knows? Maybe I could just go make up an illegal document and forge a bunch of shit on it and say that they owe me money and put a frickin' lien on Richard Sherman's mansion. And if the moron doesn't find out about it for at least 3 years, I'm good to go. No crime committed, right? That's according to the Stevens County prosecutors. People can do that, apparently. Go commit crimes. Go do whatever you want. As long as nobody finds out about it for 3 years, you're good to go. That's bullshit. That's fucking bullshit. So anyway, that's my video for today. I'm just going to vent about the, Stevens County prosecutors. They're corrupt. Rasmussen is the head prosecutor, Tim Rasmussen, in Stevens County, and he should have never been elected, and he should have been disbarred years ago. I had a not a videotape, I had a tape recording of him when he was first elected as prosecutor. I called him up because I was being illegally charged with a crime by, Kendall Allen and Captain George and all them. And so when he got elected, I called him up and said, hey, you're not going to be corrupt like the rest of the guys. You're going to be a good guy, aren't you? And he's like, oh, yeah, well, what did you do? And I told him what that was being charged with. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, as long as you don't get in any more trouble, I'll go ahead and just dismiss it. I was already represented by a public defender and everything else. By law, he shouldn't even have spoken to me on the phone. I have that tape recorder. I mean, he hadn't even been in office for a week. I could have had him disbarred, and he's known it all along. He's known that I had that, and everybody knows he did it. I mean, the county is so freaking corrupt, it's unreal. Lou Schrower used to be a prosecutor in Colville. I got rid of him. I tried to get a restraining order against Captain George when I found out he was the brother of the cop that I sued, and against Lou Schrower because of all the illegal arrests and prosecutions. And when I went in there, they told me I had to because Lou Schrower got the documents before the judge even saw him, before Judge Payne even saw him. He illegally got the documents. Judge Payne was kind of pissed. She was like, I haven't even read these yet. Yet Lou had, and showed up in the initial hearing where the judge was going to read it and decide whether she was going to even issue it for the first 2 weeks. So he shouldn't even have seen him yet, but he did. And he's in there yelling and screaming, "She can't do this! I'm an officer of the court!" Judge Payne just looks right at him. It's like, "Oh, yes, she can. Read your RCW codes." He got so pissed he started throwing chairs around the courtroom and everything. But, of course, Judge Payne was removed from the case. He got her removed, and they got another judge to come in from Spokane. He told me I had to get an attorney. So I go to the public defender's office because the county was represented by an attorney. And I tell this judge, I'm like, "This is not fair." So he gave me 2 weeks. I go to the public defender's office to try to get an attorney, and it's Lou Schrower's wife. And she tells me, "No, I will not give you an attorney because you're trying to get a restraining order against my husband." I'm like, "You got to be fucking kidding me." He's the prosecutor, and she's the one who assigns the attorneys to the defendants. Isn't that a conflict of interest? In other words, if her husband really wants to nail somebody, she just gives him the worst attorney in town to make sure her husband will win, or gives them an attorney that's their buddy, because in Colville, they all have dinner together. They're all buddies. They're all related or married to each other. All of them. It's the most corrupt freaking county. It's unreal. So anyway, when I started yelling, "Hey, conflict of interest," next thing I know, Lou Schrower is being shuffled off to Inchelium and is no longer a prosecutor in Colville. Yeah, there's so much corruption. It's unreal. But someday, maybe I'll find a real attorney with some power and some weight that will come in and help me. But until then, this is today. Yeah, the letter that I wrote to Stevens County. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.